On this podcast, we talk about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton, and this is Social Antics, another marketing podcast. Hello and welcome to Social Antics, another marketing podcast. Doyle,
How are you? Sorry.
pour your drink there now, yeah?
No,
Not ready as usual when we're doing this thing.
All is good. I'm all ready to go. How are you?
right?
I'm not bad. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm good, yeah. Feeling better this week.
Yeah, you were. What's the medical term? Fucked last week.
Something like
you
that,
had a bit of the old hay fever, I believe.
Yeah, it kills me in the summer. I forgot to take my antihistamine, so I'd say someone was cutting grass nearby or something.
It was your own fault.
Yeah,
No sympathy.
I was in the gutter last week now, not feeling great. It looked like I was after 10 pints. So
As the listeners probably noted, to be fair. But anyway, move on. What beer have you brought me this week?
this week we have the White Hag, which I never seen before, and you said it was quite nice, so we decided to pick it up. I really like the cans. I've actually never come across this beer before. So we both the same Magic Mist, which is a juicy pale ale, 5%, lovely. I just think the cans are really, really cool. Reminds me of almost like Love Island or something.
I would just stop.
That's all kicking
You
off
one
at the
of those,
moment.
you one
Not
of
a
those,
chance.
yeah?
No, I hate it.
You
with
like
passion.
a bit of Love Island? No, I reckon you love to sit down and watch fucking Love Island.
Go on, enlighten us
now.
there with the information.
I don't know. Look, I don't watch Love Island. All I know is that there's a lot of people on there who are supposedly very, very good looking, but have quite small brains.
I heard there recently that in the last week or so.
Is it the same show? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the same show whereby there was the clip going around probably 2 years ago where there was a woman on the show and she was asked like, "Oh, where is Liverpool?" And she was like, "Oh, well, Liverpool is a continent." And they're like, "No, you idiot! Liverpool is a city." Is it that show? This is the show that she got all the geography messed up.
They all do it wrong. But I heard something there recently.
It's wrong. Right,
I heard recently that what they make in a month, most of us will take 4 or 5 years to make. So that's why they just go on purely for the money reasons. But I actually heard then someone else talked about they have this kind of window to make money, like most fucking influencers now. They have this window to make money, and then the month after, some of them will go on. Obviously, like was your one Maura Higgins and all these, like they go on to obviously make big money for themselves. But some of them then after will be in nightclubs, down across the UK, or some of them here in Ireland, and they'd be like, they have to remind people, I was on Love Island, and that becomes that like the desperation that they need to make money, So some of them will actually go on to get big contracts or whatever, modelling careers and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, more important, back to the beer.
Yeah, so go
on, give us enlighten, because I actually like the side of this can. So give us story time with Dave there.
This now goes against my general kind of. So last week we had the Rascals with the Club Orange, and if memory serves me correct, the side of the can was like fucking crushed, fucking
couple of words.
Exactly, a couple of words. That was it.
White Hag,
no.
As good at marketing, the buzzwords.
Now, to be fair, right, so White Hag are based up in Sligo, so they've gotten a poet to do the side of their can. So they have said, and this can is called Magic Mist, which is juicy pale ale, and it is juicy, to be fair.
It is actually. It's very nice.
The tribe of the water goddess, Danu, the Tua de Danann,
and that is why I let you read the can.
enshrouded themselves in a mystical fog, rendering their presence invisible to human eyesight. Hidden within our juicy pale ale is a bright tropical fruit punch of mango, passion fruit and melon, with a hint of pine and a juicy, silky finish inspired by a little magical mist. Do you think I could get a job reading poetry in the corner of old Irish pubs up the country?
To put it on the leaving cert.
I'd fucking take that fucking job afterwards, to be honest with you, because this is going fucking nowhere. But yeah. So
I like this. No, this is probably one of your better decisions. No, I like this beer.
You got this beer, Dave. I recommended it. I recommended it.
Yes.
To be fair. Yeah. Anyway, what are we talking about this week?
We are talking this week about no notes. We're going to have a chat around the whole area of, I suppose, getting ready with digital, if that makes sense. So the reason why I want to talk about this is I'm working with someone at the moment, and they're purely starting out from scratch, brand new product. wanting to hit onto the market and setting up the socials for the first time, getting ready to go into the big bad world of social media, digital websites, all that kind of stuff. And I know, yeah, it's like the daunting start of it. And a lot of times we talk on this show about big brands, big budgets, big campaigns, global, changes, whatever, or global failures as well. But it's quite a daunting task for a lot of new businesses starting up to decide what to do, and when we talk even to students and stuff like that, like everyone will say, oh, we'll set up social media. What we do, we set them all up. We get across all the platforms. But nowadays, there's so many of them and they're so resource heavy in terms of time, and it depends if you're putting money behind it. But in terms of actually someone doing it, they're quite resource heavy in terms of their time and what they're costing. So, there's a lot of decisions, a lot of factors to be made when you are going online and putting your business digital, turning into what's the word I'm looking for, digitizing your business. So making those decisions, because I think the big one that you always have to look at is your audience. And a lot of people forget that when they're starting out at the start, is look at your audience first, and then make the decisions going forward, because you can waste so much time pumping content out on social media, on different channels, and it's not getting any traction.
So in terms of what you're saying, in terms of the audience, I tend to agree with you, but I think you're missing a step in that the first thing you need to do is actually decide what are you trying to achieve, your objectives. So is your business looking to create X amount of value online in terms of revenue generation? Are you looking to use online for brand building and increase your in-store? Are you and be specific, right? Is there a certain product that you think that's going to sell very, very well online? It doesn't really sell well in the store. Or is there something that does sell well in the store, but you think that can do really, really well online, whereas the majority of my stuff can't do? And get the advice around why I am actually making this decision. Because again, it's resource heavy. Like anyone who turns around and says social media is free, the first thing you should do is stab them in the head with a fork.
Yeah.
So a
good slap of a silly
stick.
Exactly.
The trick here is to understand why you are actually doing this, right? So,
of course.
For example, I was working with a consumer brand recently enough, and without going into the detail of the industry, they were a local brand, a big brand locally, but I had to explain to them that when you transition online,
it's a bigger fish.
You are now competing
you're a small fish in the big
with
ocean.
Every single competitor who has an online website in the UK, Ireland, US. You're just competing with everyone now. Why would someone go and buy from you rather? So then it was looking at a different way of doing it. How can we instead use your website to get someone in store? Mm-hmm. So you're looking at making bookings, for example, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So
it might not be the actual transaction of a sale.
Correct. You might have the whole catalog up there, just on the basis that you're looking for.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully, someone buys.
Well, does that, and that'll come organically as well over time, right? People come to your website, they'll come away and stuff like that. But it takes a lot of work to build your audience, right? Even as one of my most successful clients now at the moment. Very, very successful physical store, very, very successful e-com store. 40% of their customers on the e-com store are return customers. About of that 40%, around 80% weren't customers of the physical store before they transitioned online, right? So those are all new customers, which is great. They're returning. The amount of time it took to acquire those customers and spend the money to build up that brand online, and then not only build the brand, but then actually get the ad in front of the customer at that exact moment where they were actually willing to make a sale, cost a hell of a lot of money. And it took almost a year to make the money back. And now the company is incredibly profitable in terms of their online business, but the in-store experience was subsidizing the online for quite a long time. So I think the first thing you need to do is sit down and actually understand, what are you trying to achieve by going online? And once you set down exactly what you want to achieve, then we can start looking at audience, and then you can expand that out to what platforms that audience going on, and so on and so forth.
Then the next thing is audience. And a lot of people, as we already said there, that they'll just jump on every platform. And just because, TikTok is the bee's knees right now, it might not necessarily be the platform for you. You know, you really have to look at who you're looking to target. Like, a lot of people will say the likes of Facebook are dead, right? Yes, they are for organic posting, the whole friend side of the communication side of it. It is all dead. But if you're looking for...
It's dormant.
It's dormant, right? But if you're looking for almost like an older audience, or even, you know, the whole area of the Facebook groups for specific niche audiences in relation to that, it works really, really well, and it is not dead. And a lot of people will overlook that, not even think about that, and they'll just go straight to the usual. They'll sub to Facebook and they'll focus on, you know, Instagram and TikTok nowadays, you know, and it's all well and good. They might get stuff out of it, but, you know, overlooking where their audience are actually spending time. They might be involved in groups on Facebook for advice groups, you know, community groups, you know. Even actually, I was talking to someone recently that they moved into a housing estate. The housing estate has a little community group on Facebook. Do you know? It's all these things that people just forget about, especially people in our line of work, that they're moving on to. They're almost getting caught up in every new platform that comes out and then focusing purely on that, forgetting about all these little avenues that you can get involved in other platforms. So that is the next stage that I would always look at, is who's your audience, you know, and figure out where you're going to attack them. You do the exact same in a physical store.
Marketing, yeah.
You know, you do the exact same. Like, you know, what's the point in going to Dublin if your audience is in Cork or whatever? You know, exactly the same. You know, you're going to look at the types of streets. Is there a specific town or area that you need to be involved in? Is there partnerships in the local community that you need to get involved in?
But even going back to the basic one, like, so we've both been involved in shop launches, right, or relaunches at some point. One of the key things that you will always look at if you're looking to launch a store is footfall, which again comes back to your idea of where does your audience hang out, right? Yeah. And even we go into, like, and people mightn't kind of know this, but one of the key things that we will look at more so, like, again, particularly for a hospitality business, is more so than retail or non-food retail, is your side of the street the side of the street where the sun shines.
Yeah.
Because your traffic is going to be 70% more on that on the sunny side of the street than it is if you're on the dark side. And again, that's just a small, stupid little thing. But again, as I always say to people, if you're going to open up a store, go to where you're thinking of opening that store, and don't look at the amount of footfall. Look at the amount of people carrying bags.
I done it with a person before with a store where we stood outside for an hour at the busiest time of the day.
Only an hour
for this one particular.
I had a fella for a day.
Well, obviously more time on his hands, but you can go a couple of times throughout the week. It's quite busy. You know, your 5 o'clock rush hour traffic, whatever it is. Count how many people walk past that door. That's for the props now.
Don't mind that.
Something back, come on. Yeah.
Easier.
My OCD be off.
For the audio listeners, I've just taken the prop can and I'm opening it because I'm thirsty.
What's this one?
This is a... Carry on, we'll come back to this in a minute.
So, standing outside the store, counting how many people physically walk past your store and how many... I really reckon no one's head now. And how many people walk into the store. Do you know? And then you're going to get your percentage of, you know, your footfall. The amount of people that I'd say are in business probably years and have never stood outside their store and done it. Never.
But even one of mine now at the moment, I know we're talking about digital here, but again, it just shows you that you just translate this into a digital context, right? Business hasn't changed, just the platforms, mediums, way we manage things change. So, like any of the retail businesses that I'm involved in, particularly now when it's, again, clothing or something like that, put a ticker on the door. How many times is that door open on a day, and how many people are in there, how often they stay in there. And again, even having, like, I mean, when you go into these stores, cameras and stuff, right? A lot of people think they're for security. They're also so you can actually analyze.
See how many people are around. Yeah.
How many people are around? How are they navigating your store? Is the stairs in an intrusive place? Are your most valuable items in the area of the store where people are or where they aren't?
Put the milk at the back of the store.
Exactly. Well, yeah, the milk and bread trick. Yeah, the classic. Like, I mean, but there's all that kind of stuff there. So I think what's important here, and that comes back to what you were saying a minute ago, is that find out where your audience are hanging out, and then the next step is what are they doing when they're there, right? Yes. So, and forget about your websites and tracking and all this, because this is just you starting off, right? What we're talking about here is that if you take your base level consumer who you think is going to shop in your online store or in your physical store, depending on what your objective is and depending on depending on what your business model is. You need to understand where those people are and then double down against that. And again, the first place that I'd start there is, what are your competitors doing online and what's working? So again, it's very, very simple to go onto your competitors' Instagram page, and I don't mean a superficial 10 minutes scrolling through their page. I mean
they put up pictures of t-shirts.
I mean spend a day going through hundreds and hundreds of posts, classifying what those different types of posts are. So they're posting about products, they're posting about staff, they're posting about
stockists, whatever it is. Yeah.
Basically do a thematic analysis and understand what they're doing. Then look at what is actually driving the most engagement for all of those different types of posts. Engagements can be clicks to the website, which you won't be able to measure, but you will have an idea based on the number of likes, and who's commenting. Is it the same people over and over again, or is it kind of new people commenting? What types of questions are they asking? And doing that across your top 10 competitors, and then you've got a baseline of understanding of, this is what is working with this audience online, and therefore I need to somewhat replicate this. I mean, look, people talk about R&D in terms of research and development. R&D is read and duplicate.
I like that.
That is it. Read and duplicate.
I think I heard you saying that a few years ago.
There is no business.
I've ripped it off many a time since.
100% read and duplicate. That's what it is, because there is no store opens up on a high street and is going to do something so innovative that it hasn't been done before. It's been done before, or it's been tweaked from somewhere, or it's an alteration of something else. So find out what is happening, and developments happen over time, right? So do your research on your audience, and then you can start the process.
And then following on from that, then we've talked about before about there's no point in just putting out content, putting out posts, having a quick look at the likes or the comments or whatever it is, and then just going on doing the same thing over. You have to test this, you have to analyze it, you have to look at the metrics, the insights, seeing what's working and what's not working, and being able to track that on, especially in the early days, on a daily, weekly basis is crucially important. So like getting familiar with the insights, the analytics, knowing where to find them, your Google Analytics for your website. So like you said there, if someone walks into your store, knowing what decision they make. I'm sure many people that have a physical store will be able to tell exactly the way it works. But if someone comes onto your website, do you know what the top pages they're landing on? Do you know if they're reading blogs? Are they specifically going to this product even though you're pushing this set of product? That all is crucially important, to understand all that sort of stuff.
The one that I find the most fascinating, actually, which people constantly ignore, is what are they searching for? When they actually come into your website, what are they actually... No, not in terms of Google. I mean, when they actually land on your website...
Oh, sorry. Are they using the search bar?
Are they using the search bar? And what are they searching for? And if you don't have the products that they're searching for, you might want to get those products in, or you're attracting the wrong audience. Do you know what I mean? So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah. I think Google Analytics is such a powerful tool that a lot of businesses starting up... And actually, to be honest, there's been a couple of businesses I've been working with lately in terms of redeveloping new websites for them. They didn't even know what Google Analytics was, or people that built websites never gave them access to Google Analytics, never even told them what this tool can do for them. And I think that's just setting someone up for failure straight away.
It is and it isn't. I think that, to be fair, when you're starting off in particular, right, and I agree with you in general terms, but when you're starting off in particular, you can get bogged down by the data and get bogged down by the analytics, which is why I'd always come back to your objectives. What do you actually need to know? And then find out what platforms you can use to extract that data from. What a lot of people do is they go onto Google Analytics and they have all this information. And like, Google Analytics can be used if you're turning over 100 million a year or you're turning over 100 grand a year. It's the same platform ultimately, right? And as long as you can extract your data from that platform, it's the same pretty much for everyone, right? So therefore, you need to understand what data is most valuable to you and then use that to make decisions. If you're just taking loads of data, and we've all been there, right? Where you're sitting with a client and the client is going, what does this mean? And it's like, that doesn't matter for you. That's looking at the conversion rate on the amount of people who are reading your blog, whereas in actuality, that's not even a blog we're pushing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all this kind of stuff.
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But I do think it is important for people to understand that this tool is available and can be used.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I think like one of the key things here though is that, and I do agree with you in terms of the importance of analytics, but fundamental. What are you looking at?
Sorry, stop. I hear you saying I agree with you.
That's because you're seldom right and often wrong. So the key thing here is that you understand the core metrics, right? That's absolutely key. So if your online business, the core ones are your classic customer acquisition cost, average order value, conversion rate. Those are key, session volume and stuff like that. So you can always track progress across all the different metrics that are valuable to you, and you can actually ascertain. Again, if you've got too many of them, it's not going to work, or if you don't know what you're benchmarking against, right? So if your customer acquisition cost is 20 quid and your average order value is 200 quid, great. 10% is, could be about right depending on what your margin is on those particular products. If your customer acquisition cost is 10 quid and your average order value is only 50 quid, then you've got an issue, right? So again, it depends on what kind of business it is. So that's for your online, right? And the exact same thing applies in store. So if, for example, you're finding that people are going online, they're viewing your website, but then they're coming into store to buy from you, there's nothing wrong with you having, and we mentioned Shopify a few weeks ago, you having a Shopify tablet there, and every customer that comes up, where did you hear about us? Where did you hear about the products? And just tapping very quickly, whatever, Sinead, heard of us online, social media, web, and you've got all of that data and information in your system that you can then analyze at the end of the month, saying, okay, we only did X amount online, but actually when we look at our in-store data, a lot of them people came to our store because they saw our content first on social media, website, whatever the case. So again, it always comes at your objectives. What are your objectives and what are the key analytics metrics that will help you understand whether what you're doing is successful or not?
I think that's a good point to stick on in terms of the Shopify. A lot of people might not realize that the cost of it is quite high in terms of the cost of running it, but there is a whole POS system for Shopify that you can implement into your business. You can have it on the till. Some people integrate it with their other till systems or whatever, but the fact, if you have Shopify, never mind even having your POS system inside in the till, but having a tablet with, having it open and being able to use it and inputting people's data to come into the store. A lot of people will just keep their website over here, their in-store here, and forget about that link in the middle. Yeah. So it is important to be capturing that. A lot of people, if they have a Shopify site, every transaction, even someone just coming onto the site and signing up to a newsletter, if you have that, most Shopify sites have this kind of little section built in and they're collecting data. So it's very, very important that, if you're collecting these emails, that you use them, because they're hugely important, that you're able to retarget, certain content depending on where they came into our website, or sending out, offers, seasonal information, blogs, tips, tricks, whatever you want to send out to them. But as I said then, why not collect this data in store as well? So as you said there, having a tablet at the front of the store, a transaction is made. Would you like to sign up to our newsletter? There you go. You're collecting another person's email.
It's ultimately about integrating your analytics with your front of house ultimately as well. And whether that front of house is your website or whether that front of house is your in-store, it doesn't necessarily matter. But I suppose the next step then, is that, so you've understood your analytics, you've understood your what your objectives are for your organization. Then comes the tricky bit, right? Which is how do you translate your understanding of your audience into differentiated content online, which is actually going to drive traffic? Because, again, in a world of marketing, we're always talking about attention. And in reality, nowadays, it's very, very difficult to grab attention. And you want to grab attention from the right people at the right time. So even if you take this podcast, for example, we are doing this for a certain reason. It's not for our own benefit, ultimately. Like, we're not here for the crack. So
I thought we were.
No, you might think that. I'm not. I would go to a real bar otherwise, ultimately. Otherwise, just go to one of our locals and plonk a phone down the middle of the two of us and away you go. But ultimately, you're looking to connect with certain different types of people in industry. You're looking to put on workshops. You're looking to do whatever we're doing, and that's why we're doing this. We're doing this podcast. The exact same thing happens in the world of your social media and your digital advertising, whereby you are looking to connect with people using certain types of content. So, I mean, look, you're the kind of guy who gets involved in content creation more so than I would in terms of creative output. How would you look when you go into an organization to start to differentiate them from what's out in the world at the moment? And if you look at the majority of podcasts, all the rest of it, they'll always say, "Oh, you need to tell stories," and that drives me fucking mental because I'm like, stories. Everyone tells stories, but how do you actually differentiate via that creative output to drive customers to your site?
Look, telling the story is kind of, it's become kind of washed, I suppose. But in terms of what it actually means, yes, you need to be able to grab, as you said, that attention. I think the first thing I'll always look at is there people within the business that can come to the forefront? And this is crucially important, that anyone that is coming to the forefront is going to be there next week, is going to be there in 6 months' time. So
what you're talking about there is you're talking about taking personalities within the business and using them as the personification of your overall brand values.
Hugely important. And it can always be, it can become quite a tense conversation sometimes, because sometimes the business owner is not the right person to be in front but they think, my business now, I need to be out front, and they're not the right person because they might not be appealing to the audience you're going after. Maybe it's, a younger person will say, becoming the face of the business, but as we already talked about with Facebook groups and all this kind of stuff, that they might be appealing to an older demographic and they're just not going to have that connection, or vice versa. You could be looking for a younger audience and you're putting an older person in front of the camera where it's just not going to connect. So that's a huge undertaking at the start of going into a business. And I do think there should be some sort of a face to the business, someone that people can connect to. If it definitely is on a local, even national scale, really, like, a lot of the brands I will work with kind of food and drink side of stuff. So they want to be connected to, whether it's a family or a business or people in it, or they know that it's being made by a specific person. It's not mass produced, especially in the trends we've seen over the last couple of years of the move towards supporting local artisan.
It's that wide berth of authenticity, right?
Yeah. And COVID was, that benefited a lot of local Irish producers because there was such a surge in it. We've seen local markets being set up for food producers. All the retailers are battling off each other to who's the best of who supports Irish the best, and let them battle that out. But in the meantime, the actual producers of food and drink in Ireland are actually, and not just Ireland, across the world, I would imagine it's the same since the pandemic, but they're benefiting.
Is there not though? So I would challenge you and say that, because you've worked with more of those kind of local type producers than I would have. So if you adopted that strategy, which you said, in terms of find a personality within the business, and then they are the people who communicate local artisan. I can churn out those exact same phrases for a lot of businesses. So again, locally sourced, local producer, artisan.
But the difference is you can churn it out, but if it's not,
but isn't it how you churn it out?
Yeah, exactly. You can churn it out, and you can either make it work or not, and that's down to the fact that is it actually real, and that comes back to the whole area of trust, credibility. That comes back to the design of your website, how the in-store experience is. If it's not, you get fed up using words like real and authentic.
Define that. So you said real. What are you talking about there? Whereby, okay, let's say someone owns let's say it's a cafe in town, for example, and we say we're supporting the local economy. We have our own beans that we source from X local supplier, blah blah blah. But then when you come into the store, it's a miserable experience and everyone's cross and the staff aren't friendly. Is that what you're talking about when you say real?
Yeah, or another side of it is like if they're pushing a huge amount of content online, but it's almost like Rent a Crowd, where they're bringing in maybe influencers, or they're bringing in people, just an actor basically, just to be the face of the business. What's the point? Because that person's never going to be serving them in store. So it's all about, is it actually attention grabbing in terms of, do I know this person? Am I going to see them when I go into the store? Are they going to be serving me a cup of coffee? Are they telling the story of where they source their local products from? Am I telling the story of where the products actually come from and showing that person? There's no point in faking it nowadays, because you're just going to be found out.
Yeah,
and it's actually going to go against you.
And the reason that I asked you that is because I think it's interesting, because I have worked with businesses whereby they've almost grown almost entirely from strong word of mouth.
Yeah.
And when people start talking about again, I criticize it, but like storytelling or putting the someone as the face of the business, it does work if it's done correctly, because people want to support and talk about other people that they like. So again, like, so one of the brands that I'm working with at the moment is a women's fashion brand. Woman comes into that store and they meet with the owner, or they meet one of the owner's staff, and the staff are a reflection of the owner because there's only good people working. Because again, it's real, as you said, you know, everyone's very, very well trained and everyone knows what that brand is meant to represent. The amount of people who've come back into that store afterwards saying X person said you helped them out with this, so therefore I'm going to come in here afterwards. And it was absolute, like,
but you used the word there. You said
incredible.
Trained, right?
Yeah.
And we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I think we were talking about the whole area of in-store experiences and stuff. You can train whoever you want to say the right words, but you can't train attitudes, you can't train personality. So that's an area where it's crucially important when you're hiring people to give that experience. And it's the same with, you know, hiring someone to look after your social media. You can do all the reels and the TikToks and all that kind of stuff, but unless you're actually capturing proper content and putting out the right words with it, you know.
Well, that's the difference, as I say, and apologies to everyone who isn't from Cork in this next little bit that I'm going to do, but that is the difference between going into, say, a McDonald's in Cork and there is a staff member trained and you order a
fries with that?
Big Mac and they say, do you want fries with that? Versus you going into, let's say, somewhere in the English market and they say, do you want onions with that? Oh yeah, no problem, boy. And you put them in there. And it's just that little personal touch whereby it doesn't seem as forced, whereby is the differentiator between you feeling like you're being welcomed into that business.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. So like moving on from that, then like that's where it becomes crucially important that if you are putting someone in charge of your social media, that they still stick to the brand guidelines that were originally set out. So as you said, if it's a women's fashion brand and that person is becoming the face of the brand, there's no point in someone new coming in taking over social media because the business is starting to pick up and pressures are starting to kick on. We need to start getting extra resources in. There's no point in them in coming in and changing the model that totally was working to what they think is working because they're up and coming and young or whatever, you know, stereotypes you want to use.
Yeah.
Them to come in and say, oh no, we're going to change all that because that's old and boring. But no, hold on now. That might be working. That might transition into sales and you might not think it's working, but it actually does. And until it doesn't, then we might change it. We might A/B test and try some new things, but don't change it straight away if it is actually working. You know, and that's not like, you know, don't broke it, you know, it's like the whole thing of, you know, was it don't fix it if it's not broken. No. But like the other side of it is then there's so many times we in particular have gone in both working on a company together. They've gotten us in, they've been operating for many years, and they don't want to change it. It's not working.
At all. Yeah.
And it's not where it's like, well, why are we here? Do you know, like, what is the point in wanting to invest in this if you're not going to try and change? Because obviously it isn't working. You're getting no sales, you're getting no traction, you're getting no bookings. You know, you're not getting footfall into the store, or you could be getting more. So, you know, in that circumstance, then you have to be willing to try
once there is, and again, it comes back to what we were saying at the very, very start.
There has to be justification.
Once there is a logic and a reason why that is happening.
Yeah. And that goes back to the data, knowing your audience, and then having someone that's actually skilled enough to do it.
So I suppose we've spoken about objective setting and then understanding your analytics and then your differentiation, right? The last bit then, which is absolutely critical, is distribution. So you've created your content. Let's assume the content is good. Then you need to get it in front of that audience that we spoke about earlier on, right? So assume you've already done your research in terms of what platforms they're hanging out on. Is it Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, blogs, forums, whatever, it doesn't matter. Then it comes down to, well, how do you get that in front of that audience? And the starting point is always organic. You start posting things and you try and build up an audience. We know that trying to build an audience now on Facebook or Instagram is far more difficult than it was, let's say, 10 years ago.
See, when it comes to building an audience on Facebook, you basically just get inviting your friends. That's
Correct.
realistically the only way you're going to build it up.
Yeah, and they'll give you a
organically.
little bit of traction, but not much.
No, not at all. Not at all. Instagram used to be able to follow or build a following very, very quickly, you know, throwing in a couple of hashtags and, you know, looking for audiences similar to yours and all that kind of stuff. But now it is very, very hard. But there's nothing worse than going into a business and saying, oh, we want to grow this to a certain amount of followers. I couldn't give a shit about the followers.
Followers are vanity metrics. Yeah,
The
they don't make any
engagement
sense,
is the important. Is there people actually looking at content,
Well, I
engaging
would
in
say,
it?
well, I would say sales is the most important thing. But then again, I would say
It depends on, go back to what you said. What's the objectives here? So if you're in
sales.
yes,
Money.
of course, sales will come. But like, you know, if you're this is how you talk in the meetings.
That's what I do in all my meetings.
Yeah. How are we going to grow, Dave?
Just every time they ask a question, cha-ching! Carry on with your question. Right, sorry I interrupted you. Come on, carry on.
Nothing new. Lost me mojo now because of you. But they
Lost that long before fucking me, mate. Go on.
But yeah, so I think, look, the main thing you need to figure out is if you want to grow your social media, if you want to grow engagement, you can do that if you do it properly, organic, but it is very hard nowadays to do it purely organically. And I will agree with you. I know we disagree about organic being dead and all this kind of stuff, but there is an element that if you're wanting to grow a high level e-commerce website and grow sales, yes, you do need an element of advertising. And I would totally agree. If you're making money from an e-commerce platform, you should be reinvesting. You would do the exact same inside in the store. You would fix it up, put new shelving in, make the place look pretty, whatever it is, new uniforms.
But my thing is that, like, so I've got businesses now at the moment which are generating a huge amount of traffic and revenue from their website via organic predominantly, right? I'm not saying organic is dead. I'm saying that trying to grow an audience from scratch now versus even 5 years ago is almost impossible. And I know that people will point to a number of they did it, they did, and I'm saying, like, they did, but predominantly
if
it's
this global
organization
with 20 or 30 marketing people in their team,
100%. And again, there'll always be, let's say, so in Cork, for example, you've got the Marina Market at the moment, right? It's a new thing. People are following that because it's a physical presence and it's a new thing, and people are going there, and therefore, because they're going there, they're following the different companies there on the various channels, and that's fine. But again, if you don't have that push of exclusivity or something which is differentiated, it's so tough to grow your organic, and you've got to invest so much money in that to grow it that it almost makes the output negligible if you haven't done it right. And I think that's where a lot of companies really, really struggle, because they have to, and I'm not saying you don't get the value out of it, but you don't get the value immediately. And by immediately, I mean you might even get it year one.
Yes.
You have to grow it year 2, 3, 4, 5. And I even know from companies that I work with where they'll turn around and they'll go, oh, we'll go to a big buyer, for example, and say, oh yeah, I've been following your account there for the last year.
Good,
that's
brilliant.
That's 5 years of graft that has gone into them following you for that last year. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think that's what people need to, like, there is, and I'm not trying to sound like fucking Vaynerchuk here, because I disagree with it. I know, but like, there is a degree of patience which comes with brand building.
Yeah.
And that was even the case in the age of television. Now in the age of attention, where attention is fragmented, that takes even longer. So that having that patience, I think, is very, very key. But you need to have an end goal that you're working towards. I think the difference is that back in the age of traditional media, you were building and you needed patience, but there was no metrics to support beyond sales, whether what you were doing is working or not. Now what you have is, if you're building on social, you can look at your sales, of course, as you always would, but you're now also looking at visits to website, the amount of engagement that you're getting. And if that is creeping up every single week, then think about what your business is going to look like in 2.5 years. And that can be what you have to wait for it to happen, you know?
I think a point I wanted to bring in a few minutes ago, in terms of, you were talking about the brand building, the you know, grabbing the attention and putting someone in front of it and stuff, where you will see that very evidently, and it probably goes in maybe some of the companies you're even working with. I know I'm definitely seeing it, but you could put all this lovely content out online, But if your business owner, will say, has a bit of a profile on LinkedIn, might not even have a profile picture on, could have barely set up. I guarantee you, if they put out a piece of content about their business, it'll get far more engagement, far more likes, far more traction than the actual business account if they put out the exact same piece of content. 100%. So I do think it's important.
People like people.
Exactly.
People don't like brands. People don't like corporations. They like people.
Yeah.
It's called social media for a fucking reason. We like to be fucking social. It's simple as that. So I don't use social media anymore, really. But like, I mean,
and we know that, we know that, don't we?
I know.
But I do think that's important. So I do think if you are setting up a business, I know you particularly hate the term, but you do need to look at building up that little bit of a personal brand along the
Stupid fucking term. No, there is no personal brands.
There is.
There is not. There are individuals, there are people.
Sorry,
why does everything
what do you want me to say? Build up an individual brand then?
No, just be an individual. That's it. Just be an individual person on LinkedIn. Just be a person on LinkedIn. Everyone doesn't have to be a capitalistic pseudonym. Like, that's basically what it is. I'm a personal brand. No, you're not a personal brand. You're a fucking person.
No one should ever call themselves a personal brand.
They fucking do, though. They bloody do.
That's wrong. Yeah.
How many seminars have you seen advertised on LinkedIn? How to build your personal brand?
Yeah.
Which is the most robotic thing of all time. It's like when you see a seminar saying, I will teach you how to build your interpersonal skills. Who the fuck uses the term interpersonal skills? Your interpersonal skills. What you mean? Talking to people, is it?
Yeah, like, teach how to communicate.
Yeah. But I think the core thing that we're getting at here is that, or that you're getting at, is that there is a place for paid. You are going to have to you are going to have to spend money on it, but utilize the network that you have in the immediacy. See if you can build from that, and then look at what your paid audience looks like afterwards. Ultimately, is what you're looking at.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that's a good point to wrap it up on. You enjoying that beer? The second one.
I am. Yeah. I want to go. I'm gonna wrap this up quick. I want to go to the pub.
Are we going?
I want to go to the pub.
We go to the pub, right? Yeah. Owen, pack down quick and we get to the pub. Once again, follow us on social media, subscribe on YouTube, and all the rest.
We should almost do workshops so people would actually pay for it. We should. Maybe.
That's your job now.
What? Another workshop?
More work for you. Yeah. You're finished now for the summer.
Comment on social media if you want us to set up a workshop.
Thanks very much. We'll talk to you next week.
Good luck.